Good morning, everyone. It's another Sunday morning.
Morning.
We are reading White Magic, of course, and today we're starting on page 30 in the book. And it's midsection of the page, this life principle in man manifests in a triple manner. That's where we're going to be starting. If you have a copy that's online, that starts on page 16. If you downloaded it from Lucius Trust, that would be the page you would be working on. So everybody ready?
Yep.
Okay. This life principle in man manifests in a triple manner. As the directional will, purpose, basic incentive. That's number one. Let me stop for a minute already. We're always going to have 1, 2, and 3. Number 1 is going to relate to the will. Number 2, it will always relate to the consciousness aspect. And 3 is the matter, in a sense. It's the union of the spirit and matter. So these books are not as difficult as you might think. Some people I've watched try to memorize this and get some concept of it. The fundamental concept is he's always going to talk in threes. 1 represents first ray, second ray, and third ray. And we haven't got to ray systems yet, but that's basically what it represents. So number 1 as the directional will, purpose, and basic incentive. This is the dynamic energy which sets his being functioning, brings him into existence, fixes the term of his life, carries him through the years, long or short, and abstracts itself at the close of his life cycle. This is the spirit in man, manifesting as the will to live, to be, to act, to pursue, and to evolve. In its lowest aspect, this works through the mental body or nature, and in connection with the dense physical, makes itself felt in the brain. And this is also, is it for Eastern philosophy, Shiva? Which is the one that's the creator and the destroyer?
Shiva.
Shiva. Okay. That would coincide with Shiva. Okay. And it's the one that a lot of people don't understand because they don't understand why there should be a destroying aspect. Well, can you imagine how this planet could handle everybody who's ever been born all at the same time? Talk about overpopulation.
Yeah.
Although I had a brother-in-law who told me that there could be no such thing as reincarnation because there were only 144,000 souls.
I've heard that somewhere.
Yeah, so that was it.
Oh, and which is really interesting because in DK he says that's 1,144, and it's not even 144,000 because you're just reading it wrong. It speaks to the American like it says 144,000, but it's 1,144. So there's a big, gigantic, that's a big misinterpretation across the board. Can you imagine? That's a pretty big one, actually.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Well, you know, America is magnanimous. America has more of everything than any other country in the world. So we can understand how they would make a mistake like that.
Yeah.
We just think big, right?
You know, we're not on the metric system, so that might be part of it. So,
So number 2, as the coherent force, and number 2 is consciousness. This is the union of spirit and matter, and when it sticks together, then we've created consciousness, literally. You'll have to think about that one for a little while, but basically this is what he's talking about. It is the significant essential quality which makes each man different, which produces the complex manifestation of moods, desires, qualities, complexes, inhibitions, feelings, and characteristics which produce a peculiar psychology of any given man. This is the distinctive subjective man, his coloring or individual note. This is which sets the rate of vibratory activity of his body, produces his particular type of form, is responsible for the condition and nature of his organs, his glands, and his outer aspects. This is the soul. And in its lowest aspect, it will be seen working through the emotional or astral nature and in connection with the dense physical body through the heart. So if you also want to look on that chart that we're always using, number 1 deals with the mental realm, number 2 with the astral realm, and the third one down here is going to be the physical, the lower 3 on the chart. As the activity of the atoms in the cells, this is for number 3, of which the physical body is composed. It's the sum total of those little lives of which the human organs, comprising the entire man, are composed. These have a life of their own and a consciousness which is strictly individual and identified. This aspect of the life principle works through the etheric or the vital body and in connection with the solid mechanism of the tangible form through the spleen. Therefore, let us remember that the definition of spirit is not possible of accomplishment, nor is the definition of God. When one says that spirit is inexpressible, undefinable cause, the emanating energy, the one life, and the source of being, the totality of all forces, of all states of consciousness, of all forms, and the aggregate of life, and that which is actively manifested in that life, the self and the not self, force, and all that force motivates, one is in reality evading the issue, attempting the impossible and hiding truth behind the form of words. This cannot, however, be avoided until such time as the soul consciousness is touched and known, and the formless one can be perceived through the clear light of the intuition. One of the first lessons we need to learn is that our minds, being as yet unresponsive to the hidden intuitions, makes it impossible for us to say with assurance that such a condition is this or that or the other. Until we can function in our soul consciousness, it is not for us to say what is or is not. That until we have submitted ourselves to the needed training, we are in no position to deny or affirm anything. There you go, Donnie. That's why you stopped talking. Our attitude should be that of a reasonable inquiry, and our interest that of investigating a investigating philosopher, willing to accept any hypothesis on the basis of possibility, but being unwilling to acknowledge as proven truth anything until we know it for and in ourselves. And that's a key, a big one. That's truly important, but of course, they put it in regular print here. They didn't italicize it or capital letters, but the bottom line is when you know it, as they usually say, in your heart, or you look to yourself to find out the answer to something. That's what I believe he's talking about here. I, an aspirant to the higher mysteries, and one who has searched into them for a longer period than has been possible as yet to many, may write of things as yet impossible of demonstration to you or to the public who may read these instructions. To me, they may be in our truth and proven fact, and for me, that may suffice. For you, they should be regarded as significant possibilities and hints as to the direction in which truth may be sought. But beyond that, you should not permit yourself to go. The value of these instructions lies in their sum total and is to be found in the underlying structure or skeleton of coordinated and correlated statements, which must be considered as a whole and not in detail, and this for two reasons. So any comments on that paragraph before I plow through the next section?
For me, I think it kind of hits home in the fact, like, just because I'm saying it, it's true for me, but you're supposed to find out the truth. Like, you're supposed to feel the truth. So as opposed to us, again, going back to having to unlearn what we've learned through life, or we've been told is the truth, or whatever somebody's interpretation of truth is, we have to find out the truth for ourselves. Like, we have to know it within ourselves. Don't just take it at face value. You have to really let it speak to you and find it for yourself, that's your truth. And don't just whatever people tell you, like, oh, this is it, this is the truth, so go ahead, study this, memorize it, not necessarily feeling it and knowing it. There's a difference between knowing something and memorizing words that came from other people. That's how I
Yeah.
understand.
Donnie?
There's so much there. But somehow those people feel like they can still teach other people. There's something there that says they, in their brain, that they know something, but then you get to the point where you just don't know anything and you just have to shut up, I guess, and just listen for a while. I don't know.
Part of I think DK says about when you stop talking is then you start to learn, because you turn inward and look for the answers, and they're there if you can reach them. And now, have both the rest of you guys got the chart, the 117? Can you have
I put it in I put the chart for anybody watching into the chat.
Yeah, but so really the answers you're looking for is involved in the energy of those levels as you move up them, and that's your own development. Literally, when you look at that chart and you look at the triangles and so on and so forth, and the little permanent atoms and all of this and that is your future. Your growth and development is defined by when you hit those points. Now, some people want to fast track it. Other people are going to take another eon or two to do that. But that is the future. When you've finally got to the top, then you've accomplished what there is to accomplish and experience in that the major seven, the 49 fires, if you will, is what they call it. And then, like I said, there's 6 more of those above it. So you're ready to move on to something that's above that. But it's a long journey here. And this is probably the longest of the journeys, because we really start at the base of that chart with dirt. In other words, on this planet, we got rock and soil, and it didn't start out fully populated. All that life form has evolved on this journey back up from the single cell and now to humanity. And he does, it won't be my words, he credits that this is probably the glory point to this point is wherever man is at this point. Got a lot longer to go, but the point is it's considered the highest evolved organic unit on this planet would be us, with our ability to function with consciousness, so on and so forth. In terms of we're dealing with form, that doesn't mean that there aren't people who've already accomplished a lot of that. And if so, they get up into that spiritual triad. Now they are conscious. In fact, I had a note. So, you know, that's the big leagues for humanity, because now they have gotten to the point where they can be fully conscious and operate as a conscious unit without a body. So they got to go somewhere in this system. That's the hierarchy. If they choose to come down and incarnate for whatever reason, yes, then they'll have one, but they do not need it. So I guess the biggest probably fear of death is that you're not going to be conscious. And you're going to lose that. You're going to lose all the experiences and capacities you have here. And that does occur until you have gotten up to making that conscious connection with the soul, which is the third initiation. All of that occurs. And after that, now you are working your way up to level number 4, you know, which is the midpoint, the Buddhic plane. And there you have consciousness, and it doesn't have to be attached to a physical form out of the lower 3 elements of mental, emotional, and physical matter. So, any comments on that? No. Better tell me where I am again then, because I always lose my place.
I think we're starting at the 1 language, as earlier said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Language, as earlier said, hides truth and does not reveal it. If truth is recognized, it is because the investigating student has found a point of truth in himself, which serves to illuminate his steps as he slowly and gradually presses forward. Well, what is language? Language, first of all is energy. So any words we have describe energy in some form, either how it moves, how it coalesces, whatever, but it doesn't matter what the word is, it's describing an energy pattern of some sort. I mean, we know if we talk about a color, we're talking about a certain rate of vibration of that energy, as I recall, because red has a lower rate of vibration than violet, for example. They move at different speeds. So, and truth is related to what's called the first ray here, which is not fully informed in this system. We're in a 3-part solar system. Number 1 is already done. That gave us matter that would follow an intelligent activity, called it intelligent activity. So if it's directed to do something, it has a clue what the directions are. The second one, we're creating consciousness in this system. And when that one is done, then the third system will incorporate the first ray energy in full development through another cycle like this one, long term. What it's going to produce, nobody's even guessing, because there is no way to guess. But it's you know, yeah, that's going to be totally different than what we've got here. But the reason why you can't get a lot of this truth, and what you have to really search for it, is because it's hidden in the folds here. It's not straight out front. First ray energy would, I mean, the splitting of the atom gave you an idea of the kind of dynamics of that energy. It's too powerful for us to directly encounter. We're not ready for it. So we're quite delicate in that regard. So when it's talking about language hiding the truth and not revealing it, it couldn't reveal the real truth yet because we're nowhere near that third solar system yet. You know, we get little bits of it, and we get an idea of once we start moving up in those higher, subtler realms. But the whole truth ain't here yet. So it would maybe really set us free.
Mhm.
No,
It set a lot of people free in a way they didn't want to be set free at the end of World War II. There are many types of minds, and it is not to be expected that the information given, for instance, in this treatise will appeal to all. No kidding. It should be remembered that all people are units of consciousness breathed forth on one of the 7 emanations from God. And so those 7 emanations, there's a ray structure that goes with it. That's not what we're studying here at the moment. But it's involved in his materials, throughout the materials. Therefore, even their monads or spiritual aspects are inherently different, just as in the prism, there are 7 differentiated colors. Even this is so only because the nature and point of view and the perceiving apparatus of the man whose eye registers and differentiates the varying rates of vibratory light. The 7 subsidiary groups, again, produce a varying outlook, mentality, and approach, all equally right, but all presenting a slightly different angle of the vision. Well, Einstein told us that, right? It's all relative to wherever we are. And when the above realization is coupled to such factors as the differing points of evolution, varying nationalities and characteristics, the inherent distinctions brought about through the interplay between the physical body involved and the environment, it will be apparent that no approach to such abstruse subjects as the nature of spirit and soul could have a general definition and submit themselves to universal terminology. And I would add the point that this planet is inclusive enough to include them all and handle them all. So when they want to push people to being inclusive, I think we innately are inclusive. We live on this planet. The planet was inclusive enough to include us. So we should be inclusive enough to make room for everybody else around here too. There are 2 angles or points of view from which the nature of the soul must be grasped. One is the aspect of the soul in relation to the 4th kingdom in nature, the human, and the other that of the subhuman kingdoms in nature, which, it must be remembered, are reflections of the higher 3. It should be borne in mind that the soul of matter, the anima mundi, is the sentient factor in substance itself. It is the responsiveness of matter throughout the universe and that innate faculty in all forms, from the atom of the physicist to the solar system of the astronomer, which produces the undeniable intelligent activity which all demonstrate. And so that 3rd ray is keyed to intelligent activity, by the way, as was the development of the first solar system. That was the product, was the capacity for there to be intelligent activity in matter. Keep losing my place here. It can be called attractive energy, coherency, sentiency, aliveness, awareness, or consciousness, but perhaps the most illuminating term is that of the soul, is the quality which every form manifests. And you will see him talk about that a lot in this book. You look for the quality. it is that subtle something which distinguishes one element from another, one mineral from another. And so if you were looking at it from that terms, obviously one element has certain qualities and another one may not, because it has different qualities. It's the intangible, essential nature of the form, which in the vegetable kingdom determines whether it's a rose or a cauliflower, an elm or a watercress shall come into being. It is a type of energy which distinguishes the varying species of the animal kingdom and makes one man different from another in his appearance, nature, and character. The scientist has tabulated, investigated, and analyzed the forms. Names have been selected and given to the elements and the minerals, the forms of vegetable life, and the varying species of animals. The structure of the forms and the history of their evolutionary process have been studied, and deductions and conclusions have been reached. But the solution of the problem of life itself still eludes the wisest. And until the understanding of the web of life, or the body of vitality which underlies every form and links every part of every form with every other part, is recognized and known to be a fact in nature, the problem will still be unresolved. The definition of the soul may be regarded as somewhat more feasible than that of the spirit, owing to the fact that there are many people who have experienced a somewhat or sometime or another an illumination, an unfoldment, an uplifting, and a beatitude which has convinced them there is a new state of consciousness so far removed from that normally experienced as to bring them into a new state of being, a new level of awareness. And for anybody who looked at cosmic consciousness, that's the point that whole book makes, including in the back some personal little testimonies from people who were actually alive at the time the book was written and printed, and their stories were included, where they, whether it was for just a few minutes or a longer period of time, I mean, they're never the same again. And it was an improvement to their condition, not an, you know, a demolition or anything, but they now knew certain variable truths that they were not aware of a few minutes or a few hours earlier. And it never leaves them. At that point, it's not just a momentary thing that passes by. It's changed them. It is something felt and experienced and involved, that psychic expansion which the mystic has registered down the ages. And that's the astral plane. The mystic goes with the astral plane, and which St. Paul referred to when he spoke of being caught up in the third heaven and hearing things there which it is not lawful for men to utter. When hearing and sight on those levels are both producing registered experience, we have the occultist plus the mystic. And that's what he indicates, that eventually you move from the mystic to the occultist, which is you're moving from the emotional to the mental plane in that process also. There was a story in the Cosmic Consciousness book where the woman, and this would have been in the 1800s, somewhere late 1800s, probably, or 19, maybe the 1900s. Walt Whitman was around and so on and so forth. And so it was a group that kind of coalesced with him. She was telling her story, and she had come out, and they were in more rural areas. I think it was, a lot of them were in New England, I believe. And her plants and her flowers were all golden yellow. Because she was seeing in the etheric, she was seeing the etheric pattern of this, and it was that, you know, light. It was light It wasn't like solid gold or yellow, but, and she thought this was probably the burning bush that Moses saw that didn't burn. And that flashed in her mind, and she's probably has a pretty good chance of being accurate, because when he was up there, you know, he moves into that realm and he sees in that realm. And then you see the etheric form. I don't know if any of you see it around people, the line of golden light. Usually when you're younger, it's reasonably easy to see if you kind of set your eyes like you're looking at something, and then you're still looking, but you're not focusing really. And there's a golden line, which is, I believe you would classify as the etheric. And then around humans, at least, and even other stuff, I think, there's a very light violet line of light that's right above it. And then for people who see auras with a lot of different colors, that extends out further. I guess my daughter sees that, from what I understand. She said she's a teacher, so she would see it in her students, but not necessarily understand what she was seeing, you know, and so on and so forth. She didn't know what to do with it. She just has that vision or that capacity to see on those levels. But the etheric body, you generally, the eye now, for the most part, can see the outline of that. Not necessarily the golden etheric that's in there, that's now filled with substance, you know, and matter, to a point where we see ourselves as a form, but the outline is there. And I oftentimes, when I look at the pictures of the earth from space, you know, you've got that golden band of light around this planet also, and I don't think it's all just sunlight reflecting, but it could be. But in a human being, it's there, and it's actually there on wood. You know, it's around anything. In other words, the wood's been cut and it's been in your, made cabinets in your house or something like that, but there's still a line that's there. But it's just kind of throwing your eye off focus to a point where you're not really looking and connecting. Well, I'm seeing that piece of drapery over there with that piece of lace on it. You know, you're not, you've moved past that, and you're just, anyway. And also these descriptions, the hearing and the sight on those levels, et cetera, when you get into cosmic fire, there is a full chart of the 5 senses we have, with the 5 levels of the 5 senses and what each one of them produces as its product when you're functioning on that level. So at some other time down the line, we may come across that, but at this point in time, you know, you got to be, the stories we probably have, some of them is St. Paul being caught up in his 3rd heaven, Moses going through that. Those get carried through. A lot of other people have experiences like this, but they just don't make the big leagues in terms of everybody hearing about it. And look at the products. It produces something. There's data, there's information with it. It's a gift package, if you will, but you work hard for it. So the soul, macrocosmic and microcosmic, universal and human, is that entity which is brought into being when the spirit aspect and the matter aspect are related to each other. That is the union of spirit and matter, and you're going to hear it over and over and over through these books, because it is what creates the, it creates consciousness, and it's macrocosm and the microcosm. You know, this is it in this system, our second system. The soul, therefore, is neither spirit nor matter, but is the relation between them. Now, it didn't say the union of the two of them. It said the relation between them. So spirit and matter and the relation between them is the 3 in 1. That is actually, I mean, so a lot of what you learned in Christianity, where you had to believe because it was the age of Pisces, you will now, in the age of Aquarius, you will know what it is, and it will merge with science. Science is not going to defeat Christianity by any stretch of the imagination. It's going to prove it in the next generation, because what you had to believe, you will now be able to know how those things happened and why. So it's not going to undo Christianity. It's going to strengthen it. But we're not talking about how Christianity was practiced by the church or anything like that. But the knowledge and the information, this is going to be, again, we're just moving on up. Just like all of the other avatars who came over the last eons that gave a little message, and then you get a couple thousand years to try to incorporate it, and then you're going to get another one from somebody else who comes along, gets you the next piece. And so that is, it's a very logical process when you can start to see it from a mental perspective, which we're just getting to a point where we can see it that way. So the soul, therefore, is neither spirit or matter, but the relation between them. The soul is the mediator between this duality. It is the middle principle, the link between God and his form. Therefore, the soul is another name for the Christ principle, whether in nature or in man. The soul is the attractive force of the created universe, and when functioning, holds all forms together so that the life of God may manifest or express itself through them. And so there's your life aspect again. Therefore, the soul is the form building aspect and is that attractive factor in every form in the universe, in the planet, in the kingdom of natures, and in man, who sums up in himself all the aspects, which brings the form into being, which enables it to develop and grow so as to house more adequately the indwelling life, and which drives all of God's creatures forward along the path of evolution through one kingdom after another towards an eventual goal and a glorious consummation. And in the middle there, which is somewhere where we are, those little transits do the same thing to you in your chart. And actually the circle in the chart and the way it's divided, you get 4 sets of squares, which are 90-degree angles, and those are in conflict. Those 90-degree angles are in conflict with those 4 points in the square. And in a circle, you have 3 sets of them. Following what I'm saying?
3 times 4, right?
Yeah, but the point is that it doesn't matter where you are in this relation. There is a driver for evolution, because you're not going to be able to rest. You don't really see people on this planet. They all have these cycles. It looks like they've got a golden life and so on and so forth, and everything is so sweet for them. Believe me, it's not. They all have the same kinds of cycles. It's how they handle it and how the planets line up for them. But yeah, no, I know people that everybody thinks, oh, wow, they've had such a great, fantastic life. Well, if you happen to know them really well, you may realize no, that's not, they had their problems too, but it was just the way they chose to handle them that the public didn't see, kind of thing. So the point is, you're going to evolve. Nothing gets to just sit here and be static. We know, first of all, what everything is in motion, and the only thing constant on this planet is change. So we're definitely going to get there one way or another. The soul is the force of evolution itself, and this was in the mind of St. Paul when he spoke of Christ in you and the hope of glory. So the soul is the force of evolution itself, and this was in the mind of Paul. This soul manifests differently in the various kingdoms of nature, but its function is ever the same. Whether we are dealing with an atom of substance and its power to preserve its identity and form and carry forward its activity along its own lines, or whether we deal with a form in one of the three kingdoms of nature held coherently together, demonstrating characteristics, pursuing its own instinctual life, and working as a whole toward something higher and better. Therefore, the soul is that which gives distinctive characteristics and differing form manifestations. The soul plays upon matter, forcing it to assume certain shapes, to respond to certain vibrations, and to build those specified phenomenal forms which we recognize in the world of the physical plane as mineral, vegetable, animal, and human, and for the initiate, certain other forms as well. The qualities, the vibrations, colors, characteristics in all of the kingdoms of nature are soul qualities, as are the latent powers in any form seeking expression and demonstrating potentiality. In their sum total, at the close of the evolutionary period, they will reveal what is the nature of the divine life and of the world soul, the oversoul, which is revealing the character of God. And sometimes they will talk about the oversoul, of a particular kingdom of nature, so on and so forth. Therefore, the soul, through its qualities and characteristics, manifests as conscious response to matter, for the qualities are brought into being through the interplay of the pairs of opposites, spirit and matter, and their effect upon each other. This is the basis of consciousness. The soul is the conscious factor in all forms, the source of that awareness which all forms register, and of that responsiveness to surrounding group conditions which the form in every kingdom of nature demonstrates. Therefore, the soul might be defined as that significant aspect in every form made through this union of spirit and matter, which feels, registers awareness, attracts and repels, responds or denies response, and keeps all forms in a constant condition of vibratory activity. The soul is the perceiving entity produced through the union of Father, which is spirit, and Mother, which is matter. It is that which in the vegetable world, for instance, produces the response to the sun's rays and the unfolding of the bud. It is that in the animal kingdom which enables it to love its master, hunt its prey, and the unfolding and follow out its instinctual life. It is that in man which makes him aware of his environment and his group, which enables him to live his life in the three worlds of his normal evolution as the onlooker, the perceiver, and the actor. This it is which enables him eventually to discover that this soul in him is dual, and that part of him responds to the animal soul, and part of him recognizes his divine soul. The majority, however, at this time will be found to be functioning fully as neither purely animal nor purely divine, but can be regarded as human souls. So you want to make a comment or two? Where does this fit in with your earlier teachings, your religious upbringings and patterns? Anybody got a comment?
That's a great question.
I'm wondering as we're going through this, and I'm wondering if there's been a turn of phrase with the word soul, because you have a lot of people that say animals don't have any souls. You hear that and you're like, that can't be true. Like, they're living beings, and I know, Melinda, you're vegan, so I think you get where I'm saying with this, where there are those people who are just like, oh, and then they mistreat animals to the extent where it's like, oh, but they have no soul, so they don't matter.
Even if
so
they didn't have souls, they still feel pain and suffering and sadness and comfort and joy and fear.
Right. But that's somewhere down there. It's and I don't know if it just makes it easier on people to do certain things or to be a certain way, or for this planet to be dying the way that it's dying, where you're not connecting that word soul. What people, I think, are thinking of soul, they're thinking of like human consciousness.
That. I just think some people just aren't there. They just don't get it. They're so they're so dense. Is that the word? Dense? Is that
Good
the
word?
word?
I think we got to that word last week, didn't
Last
we?
week, yep.
They're just not, like, sometimes I look at people and I'm like, just wow, really? Like, there's nothing there yet. Or that I can identify with. Like, it's just like, okay, like I almost feel sorry for them, because they're just so unaware and unconscious of freaking anything going on outside of their meat sack, like their own selves. Right. They would hurt. It doesn't even have to be an animal. Like, they're willing to hurt anybody or anything, any plant, any animal, any person. Like, they're just so. And then there's people that still don't understand, like, well, God said I could kill animals. It's like just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Like, so I just think, like,
so that's where I'm getting, like, that's what I think. From what I'm getting out of this, the connectedness, everything's connected. So everything has, but I'm thinking, like, people are thinking that soul, they're separating the kingdoms, the animal kingdom,
that's what man does.
Because there's the classifications, nature, and separating that. So I think they're not forgetting, but need to get to the point where they know everything's connected.
Well, that's what man does.
The word, our understanding of the word soul, I think, growing up, because some of this was, as I'm reading this, I'm like, well, that's not kind of how I remember being told, like, humans have whole souls. like you're really taught.
And remember, we just read that language hides the truth.
Exactly.
So you can take soul any which way you want. Like, you can relearn it for yourself and then apply it however you want. But the truth is within you. So however you want to call it, soul, like, it's in there. It's just not everybody has had access to that. And man is most people they're not in this group. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so.
Or at least they're not aware of this information.
They're not aware. Yeah. They haven't been exposed, I guess. To it, or had the experience enough to even go, wait.
Or they don't identify with it yet.
Exactly. Yeah.
It definitely feeds on what we discussed last week. Like you said, Carla, you like that word dense. But as we're doing this, I feel like I'm unlearning our given definitions of words.
Right.
Like, it's having to look at the word soul as something different, look at the word matter as something different. It's just a change in context.
And it opens your world, maybe makes it a little larger.
Yeah, a whole lot of lights are turning on. Is what's happening.
Yeah, and you know, I don't think I've ever seen it printed somewhere else, but oftentimes I will say we are planetary issue in the biblical sense of the word. In other words, we are here because the planet puts up with us, if you will. We're part of the planet. We are a needed portion of it, and we have a purpose, and that evolutionary purpose. I think he says it in one of these books that our goal is to be a fully conscious unit in this planet, functioning unit of consciousness, but fully. So we're talking about going all the way to the top and experiencing that level, you know, and have developed to that level, and that every human being is meant to eventually do that. Now, I will come back to something that conversation Donnie and I had yesterday, and it was about the 2/3, or no, 2/5, 3/5. What's the division supposedly? Because you asked me the question about it.
It's 2/5, 3/5, but I couldn't remember which side it leans towards.
Okay, but it doesn't matter either one.
Right.
You know, I'm just getting rid of texts that are showing up there. There's no bugs flying around or anything. Anyway, Donnie was asking about that, bringing up, you know, well, there's going to be a division at a certain point. And I know that the Christian church used that as a fear. You know, it's fear mongering, you know, and a threat. If you don't get to this point, then, you know, what I assume they thought they were going to hell, that other section, or something. But
like a fire.
Huh?
Yeah, like a fire, you know.
So, but the way I look at that is that at that point in time, whenever it is in the future, this planet will have developed to a point where it's going to take in total a major initiation, a leap forward. I don't think the comparison I'm going to make is accurate, but it's going to make a point. We are not we haven't fully taken the 5th initiation according to DK. We've taken the subjective one, not the objective or the outer world one. Venus is a 6th degree, has their 6th degree initiation. Okay. So Venus's objective form has 843 degree temperature with what, an encasing of methane gas. All right, so to speak. The point is that way off. It's quite an advanced state when they take that initiation. It will be for this planet too. We are a planet that continually brings up evolutionary life from the bottom up. I mean, that's where we started. Now we're in a point, we're still animal man. We're still considered animal man until we hit spiritual man, which means until you get to functioning on the Buddhic plane and are connected and starting to interact with the spiritual triad. So that you got to move to level 4, of which, and there are beings who are doing that, but then we're at a point where we can have our consciousness and not necessarily need matter as a form in order to experience that consciousness and work with it. So there will come a time for this planet when there are X number, what were the divisions again? 2/5, 3/5 or whatever. When, let's assume it's the 3/5 stays because they have evolved to a point where they can handle the transition. There will be some of these beings that are still coming up that will not be able to make that transition. They are not going to hell. They will be moved to another location in this, our universe, where they can continue their growth and development. But They're not excommunicated. They're not any of those things.
Right.
So it's not, and it's not going to be a bad thing if they aren't up in that other group, because this is like a constant, I don't want to say baby factory here, but it's an evolutionary process of bringing up. Finally, you figured that out. You know, the animal kingdom making a transition into the human kingdom. And that's all that is. But that was used as a major threat and fear in the Christian church because, well, they couldn't teach this because then they'd have no handle on the people at all. You can do it yourself project. So the last 2,000 years, how many of them would have got on the bandwagon? You know, and actually, if you read history, they didn't get on the bandwagon anyway until very late, probably the 1800s, before there was really a practical application of what we now think as Christianity and morality and so on and so forth. It wasn't there. First of all, they were never even allowed to read the book. And most of them joined because that was the way that you got into the guild. You became part of the community. If you joined in name only, just to get the benefits of the society for the most part. So anyway, but anyway, I wanted to make that conversation that we had about the 2/5 and the 3/5, and none of them are going to hell.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I'm going to be right back. I just had to go pick up my daughter across the street real quick. So I'll be right back.
Yeah, we can take a little break too.
Yeah, it's time for a break. So we'll call it here.
Okay.
What page was this? We're on 34, 35. Yeah, 35.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay.